Hey guys, welcome back to another video on the channel, and yeah, welcome back to the Elite Sport channel. Today I'll be doing my season predictions. Now, it's a little bit later than what people probably would have been expecting, but I've decided to do it after all the practice games are finished, so I could get a good look at every single side and manage that and see where I've got everyone placed. So yeah, let's get straight into it. 18th position is still GWS. They did impress in their practice game against Gold Coast, but yeah, it's still not enough. They did smash Collingwood last year in their practice game, and yeah, they bet the Suns. The Suns didn't really try. They had a good fourth quarter though, the Suns, and yeah, look, a little bit concerning for the Suns, but the Giants, look, they were good, but yeah, it's going to be a tough season. New coach. It'd be interesting to see what Adam Kingsley can do for the Giants. I don't think they're going to be getting much wins at all. Yeah, I have them with one win. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's just what I've got. 17th place, I have North Melbourne. This was Hawthorn, but now it is moved to North Melbourne. They got flogged in yesterday's practice game against the Bulldogs, and while they did show some signs against Richmond last week, I just don't know how North are going to go. I mean, they've got to bleed some games into the younger players, and the youth of the club isn't quite right yet, and well, they've got Clarkson there, and I think he can be the right man, just not quite the season for North Melbourne. In 16th I have Hawthorn. Now everyone's been talking about Hawthorn coming last, but they played really, really well against Collingwood, and it was enough for me to bump them up a few positions. And yeah, I think they will challenge a few teams, and I reckon they'll upset a few sides this season, and really, really push for some more wins. I reckon they'll have a very, very similar year to last year, but with some of the other clubs coming up, they somehow slipped to 16th. In 15th, I have West Coast. Now, most people would have West Coast here. It's just the right spot for West Coast, really. I think they'll challenge a few teams, but I don't think they're going to do much. I think they'll have a very, very poor start to the season, but do a lot better. And kind of a big call here. Adam Simpson is going to get sacked as West Coast coach after a 1-8 start to the season or something like that. But yeah, look, it's not going to be the best for the Eagles. It's just going to be a poor start. In 14th place, speaking about poor starts, I have Port Adelaide. This is my first real big call of the video, and well, last season Port Adelaide, they started horribly, and I have them starting horribly again this season. I just don't think Port Adelaide, I just don't see them winning many of their first 5 games. I think they might beat the Crows, but out of that, that's it. Like, I reckon they'll be 1-4, very, very similar to last season, and it could take them a little while to get their first win if they do lose to Adelaide. So yeah, first big call, Port Adelaide 14th. I've seen lots of people put them up high, but I've got them there. In 13th, I have Essendon. Now, Essendon haven't shown much in their practice games, but I do have them in 13th. I still have some confidence and belief in the Bombers that they will finish 13th, expecting some big seasons from Peter Wright, Sam Wiedemann, Darcy Parish, and Andy McGrath. I think the Bombers will have a pretty good season. I reckon they'll win some good games, and they'll definitely challenge some of the teams above them. Now, in 12th spot, I have St Kilda. They've dropped a few places since my last predictions video. But yeah, look, the Saints, they haven't shown much in their practice games. They did win against the Bombers a few days ago, but it was so unconvincingly, the most unconvincing win I've seen from the Saints in ages. And they've got so many players that are injured or either going to be out or maybe might be okay for round one, and they've just got so much players that just don't look right at the moment. And yeah, I don't know where the club's at the moment for the Saints. I have them 12th. I've seen people put them lower, but I just don't know if they're going to finish any lower. I think they're going to have a really, really, really poor start to the season, though, but then build like they did in 2021. Now, in 11th spot, I have the Bulldogs. I was thinking about putting them a little bit lower, but after yesterday's practice game, I think 11th spot is right. Everything about the Bulldogs says that they will probably flog every single side that finishes below them. Sides like St Kilda, West Coast, North Melbourne, which we saw yesterday. But then they'll struggle against the teams that finish above them, and that's why I don't have them in the 8 this season. So teams like Melbourne, Carlton and Brisbane, they're the sides that you've got to be finding wins against if you want to make the 8. And because of it, I have the Bulldogs finishing 11th. And also they have kind of a tough draw for a side that I didn't expect was going to make the finals in the first place. So even if they would want to, they've got to be great to do it. So we'll clearly see if the Dogs are a good side if they make the finals, and that could carry some form in. I think they will have some inconsistent patches and some consistent patches though, and maybe scare a few teams. Now in 10th spot I have Adelaide. This is another big call. I think Adelaide will finish quite high this season. I think Matthew Nicks has finally got his rebuild going his way. They've recruited Isaac Rankin. They didn't draft too well last year, but in recent years they've drafted really, really well. Players like Riley Philthorpe, Sam Berry, Will Hamill and Mitch Hinge are starting to really, really find their spot in the side, and they're really, really starting to lift. And because he's bled so much games into these crop of players in recent years, they're really, really starting to come together. And you could see it yesterday in their practice game against West Coast. They were incredible. In fact, it was 2 days ago now, but they were just incredible in that game. Isaac Rankin only kicked the 1 goal. It just shows you how well their rebuild's going. Even when Isaac Rankin kicks 1 goal and plays all 4 quarters, he had pretty much no impact on the game. And I personally think Isaac Rankin's going to be a great recruit for them. He's going to kick 40 plus goals, I reckon, for them, and really, really push for finals. Now, 9th spot, this is the real sad part of the video. I have the Gold Coast Suns, and the reason why they don't get into the finals is, well, they were a win off, and their percentage is just poor because I think they're going to struggle against some of the teams that finish really, really, really high on the ladder, like Geelong and Melbourne, those types of teams. They've just got to try and win those games. I have them upsetting nearly every side in the top 8, but they'll have some inconsistent patches against teams that finish below them, like Port Adelaide, and even Essendon. I think they've got to win those games if they want to play the finals, because I think up at Metricon they are good enough to beat Sydney. They play quite well at the SCG. They play Sydney twice. They could beat them both times. I can see them surging against Carlton and Melbourne, and that should be enough wins if you beat every single side below you and a crop of sides above them. That should be enough to get into the top 8. But yeah, unfortunately, I have the Suns in 9th. Now, in 8th position, I have Fremantle. They haven't shown much in their practice games, but one bloke that has, which is great to see, is Nat Fyfe. He's in great form at the moment, and that forward role could really, really suit him this season. I personally think he could have a good season up forward and maybe kick 30 to 40 goals for him. He was playing deep as forward in both games against Port Adelaide and Adelaide. But yeah, I have Fremantle getting in thanks to a few sneaky draws. I actually have Fremantle playing in against the Sydney and the Western Bulldogs this season. I think Fremantle, the big thing about them is the ability to play away from home as well. Like, we know they play quite well at Optus. It's just when they go over to like games like the SCG or the MCG, they've got to be able to get them wins there. Now, last year they had a great record at Marvel, but recently, before that year, they haven't had a good record at Marvel. So they've got to hope that they can continue that forming. And if they don't beat St Kilda, I can see Fremantle missing the 8 in round 1. Their round 1 game is massive. if you talk about teams who have big round one games, I think it's probably Fremantle, Carlton, and Port Adelaide. Now, 7th spot is Sydney. This is another big call. Sorry to Swans fans who probably are backing them in after what they did a few days ago in their practice game. They absolutely blew away the Blues, absolutely thrashed them. They kind of ran out of steam in the second half and let Carlton come back, and they just won the game in that first quarter. Errol Goulden, how good was he? And other kids as well, Chad Warner, James Rowbottom, Justin McInerney. Blokes like these had to step up in this game against Carlton, and now they've got a few injury issues. You know, Blakey, he's actually back in now. Tom Hickey, Longmire's backing him in for round one, so that's good. But if not, then they could be in real trouble. And they play the Gold Coast Suns. I actually have the Suns winning that game at the moment. But yeah, it could get concerning for the Swans. Honestly, 7th spot. It's not great, not ideal, but I just have them dropping off after. It always happens to a grand final side that loses, but I don't think it'll be enough to make him come out of the 8. Like I've seen other people, even Cardi, tip him to miss the 8. Now this is another big call. I have Melbourne in 6th. I've seen people put them in 1st. Now, their ceiling is 1st, Melbourne. They have the ability to go all the way, but their floor is probably 6th, and I have them there. And that's due to inconsistency, like last season. Will they be able to manage it? And they had even injuries to players like Tom McDonald, really, really important ones. Even Stephen May, he missed a few important games. Jake Lever's got to stay fit, especially seeming he got injured in their first practice game against St Kilda. It's all about Melbourne players staying fit. Max Gawn, he fell off at the end of the season. To me, Melbourne dropped last season due to injury. And if they can sustain that injuries and maybe bleed some depth into some younger players, they could maybe do better. It didn't work with Toby Bedford, but maybe they're going to do it with some other guys. They've let a few players go. Yeah, they have recruited Grundy. I know that's going to be big. Lockie Hunter looks set at home. Probably taking James Jordan's spot on the side, which is quite disappointing for that young fella, especially seeming he only got a few minutes of the grand final a few years ago. But yeah, if Melbourne fans want to see their side winning a grand final at the G, they've just got to build consistency and stay fit. Now 5th, I've got Carlton, and this could be a big call. I've seen people put them in the top 4, but I don't see Carlton not making finals like last year. Like, that was just the saddest thing possible. They just had to win one of their 4 games. They dropped in a shocker to Adelaide. That I was thinking about tipping Adelaide too. It didn't happen. And they couldn't get it done against Brisbane away, even though they had that last quarter surge. Yeah, they couldn't get it done. Melbourne and Collingwood both broke their hearts in the final minutes of them 2 games, and they were in the 8 all season, and then they just dropped out. It's just so unfortunate. But guys like Jesse Motlop, and them type forwards, even Josh Honey, I reckon they could crack in and, you know, have an impact. And of course you got Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow. They're both set for prime years. Whether they'll steal goals off each other and maybe rob one another of a Coleman, who knows? But yeah, both of them are great options for the Coleman medal. But yeah, it's got 5th place Blues. They've got to stay fit too, just like Melbourne. They've just got to stay fit. Now, in 4th spot, I've got Collingwood. A little bit biased, I know, but I can't put them any higher. So I'm not overly biased, but I am a little bit biased, yes. I think recruits like Tom Mitchell, Bobby Hill will make impacts. Bobby Hill only probably because Ginnivan's unfortunately suspended. But yeah, Bobby Hill, he'll be in the side, you'd think, round 1. It's just whether he can stay in the side or not is the big question. Obviously, Grundy's a huge loss, but Cameron and Cox could be able to manage it for the whole season, who knows. But we can't keep it up forever. We've got to get a prime ruck. Now, Darcy Cameron, he's very, very clever. He's a smart ruck, but he's not the best still. I just think we're a little bit flory in that area of the ground. But yeah, we played quite well against Hawthorn at times. There was moments where we just clicked. Lipinski was amazing before he unfortunately injured his shoulder. Now he's in doubt for round one, which is a bit unfortunate. Tom Mitchell, the way he just gets his hands on it is just amazing. He clearly made a difference in the first quarter. We were dominating clearances. We did not do that at all last season, and we were doing it all because of Tom Mitchell and a primed Jordan Ngoe. Third spot is Richmond. Now, everyone's saying the dynasty's over. You know, after 2020, they won the flag. They came from nowhere. 2021, riddled by injuries, couldn't get into the finals. Last season, had a good crack, but choked late against Brisbane. This season, they've recruited Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper. They've found their flaws perfectly, Richmond. They've got some great inclusions. They drafted extremely well for the amount of draft picks they had. And I think some of the younger players from even last season and the season before that haven't played games could even get cracks. And Hardwick talking about giving some younger guys a go and resting some of the older blokes like Rewalt and Cochin, players like that, so they can be rested up for finals. They're doing the exact same thing that Geelong do. I reckon they're going to have a very, very similar game plan. Sure, they didn't really try yesterday against Melbourne. In the end, it was a very, very similar trial game, in my opinion, to Geelong's last season against Gold Coast. So, I wonder if that's a little pattern there. But they didn't really try. Unfortunately, Prestia got injured. He's now raced against the clock to be fit for round one. He's got just over a week to be fit enough to play. Do Richmond risk him? I don't know. But yeah, it should be a great season for Richmond. Now, second, I've gone Brisbane. I couldn't put him in first. Just couldn't see him winning just enough games. But they played amazingly against Geelong the other night. Now, you can argue Geelong didn't have their best side on the park and they weren't really trying. But Geelong should have enough depth to cover guys like Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron, and Isaac Smith, those type of guys that weren't playing. They should have enough depth, but it doesn't seem like they have young kids that can do it. I mean, they've drafted well, Geelong, but yeah, I don't know about that. Anyway, Brisbane, Will Ashcroft, amazing. Josh Dunkley, he's going to be good. Jack Gunston, wow, he looks like he's going to pinch a few from Hipwood and Danaher this season, which could be, in a way, bad for Brisbane. But, yeah, they were so consistent last season too. More towards the end part of the season. They weren't that consistent for the home and away season, though. But they were so consistent in the finals when they haven't been recently. And, all their forwards have been very, very consistent. 8 players last season had 20 or more. I mean, it could be 10 this season, really, with the adds of Jack Gunston and even a primed midfielders that can just break through and just kick heaps more goals. Lachie Neale looks amazing. He looks like he's going to win the Brown, though, the way he's going. But yeah, Brisbane, second place. First place, I do have Geelong. That's just because I think that, like every other season, they just love the home and away season. They always get a decently rated draw, and yeah, I think Geelong, they certainly are going to be the team to beat this season. So yeah, I have them in first. Now, medal winners. The Brownlow medal, I've given it to Clayton Oliver. I've backed him in still. I think Clayton Oliver will win the Brownlow. But I think there's 2 other guys that could pinch him from him. Lachie Neale, he looks amazing. He's primed for a big season. He looks very, very dangerous. And yeah, kind of nerve-wracking. The other one is Touk Miller. Now, yes, he is injured at the moment, and because he is injured, he may miss round 1 or round 2. He might miss a few games. But with the extra game this season, he could be able to, pinch more votes. And yeah, he looks absolutely amazing. So they're the only 2 blokes I could see pinching it off Clayton Oliver. Bontempelli is another one that looks good. Now, for my Coleman medal, Tom Lynch, I think he's probably going to win it, to be honest. Or maybe Harry Mackay or a Charlie Curnow, or even a Jeremy Cameron, even a Ben King could be a big call. But I'm going to go, and now that I'm just taking the piss here, really. Marby or Chol. Marby or Chol is going to win the Coleman. You're going to see it everywhere. Marby or Chol, the Coleman medal winner. He's going to win it. Sure, Ben King's probably going to pinch heaps, and he's got a real good crack of winning the Coleman as well, in my opinion. But Marby or Chol, the man, he's going to win the Coleman, and he's going to have that shiny thing around him this season. It's going to be big. Now, let's get into finals. This is all we want. Finals football. Rematch of the qualifying final last season. Geelong v Collingwood. First v fourth yet again. This time, the Pies get it done. I think we can beat the Cats in the qualifying final in a thriller and get home. Now, Elam Final 1. Carlton v Fremantle. Gee, this is going to be a big one. And yeah, unfortunately, Carlton have delisted Jack Nunes. So yeah, no Jack Nunes this time. They don't have Mark Murphy either. They've been the recent players that have clutched. I reckon Blakey Acres is going to clutch for Carlton and kick a goal after the siren against his former team and win the Elam final over Fremantle. I reckon Freo will be very, very good in this game, though. They probably should have got it done. And now Melbourne versus Sydney. Now, I can see Sydney winning this game in this Elam final. But the only reason why I've gone with Melbourne is due to injury. I think Sydney, they've already got some bad injuries, but I think Sydney will have some injury issues this season, and Melbourne get the job done. Now, Brisbane v Richmond, rematch in the elimination final last season. This time it's a qualifying final, second v third. This is going to be a big one, and in my opinion, I think the Brizzy Lions get it done, just like they did in the prelim final back in 2021 or 2020, I'm not 100% sure which one. Probably, no, it was 2020. It would have had to have been 2020. Then first semi-final, Geelong v Carlton, the big one, that's for sure. And as much as I want Carlton to win, and as much as I can see Carlton winning this, I think Geelong just scraped past the Blues here in a gritty win and managed to push thanks to a good last term. And Melbourne v Richmond. What a semi-final this is going to be. What a semi-final we are in store for. It is going to be packed. Absolutely amazing stuff. And I think Richmond can flog them. I think the D's will get flogged in this one. Richmond will flog their way into the prelim final. Now, the first prelim final between Collingwood and Richmond. The big one. And I'm tipping Mason Cox to do what he did back in 2018 and put us into a grand final, our second one in the recent era. Now, Brisbane versus Geelong, another prelim final between these two sides, happened last season. I'm just going to assume it happened the season before. I don't think it did, but I'm just going to assume it did. 2020 it happened, 2019 it's just a reoccurring thing. And I have Brisbane winning this game finally up at the Gabba, securing their spot finally in a grand final against Collingwood. So it all comes down to this. At the MCG, Collingwood v Geelong. Cardi tipped Collingwood to make the grand final, so don't you guys say I'm biased in the comments, especially you Geelong fan. I definitely know you will be saying I'm a biased supporter. And you probably be saying I'm a biased supporter after this. I think Collingwood will take home the 2023 grand final. It has to be the year. If we don't win this year, when are we going to win it? Maybe next season, but still, I just don't see us winning it again. So you can call me biased. The pair went and tipped his power to bloody win the grand final when I have them as a bottom 5 side. So you can call him biased if you want, but I'm not that biased. The Pies are going to win the grand final. Hope you liked the video. Hope you loved watching it. And yeah, big calls. Collingwood to win the grand final. Marby or Chol for the Coleman. The champion. The Dogs coach Beveridge is going to be out. Sacked. And Adam Simpson as well for the West Coast Eagles is going to be sacked. And another one, Essendon, to start the season on top of the ladder after 3 rounds. So they're my 5 big calls heading into the season. Hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, stay tuned for some more videos coming out soon on the channel.